This is episode 118 of the Photographer and Model Podcast.
The one where Shawna and Ron answer your questions.
I'm sorry I was born with this perfect bone structure, that my hair looks better done up with gel and mousse than hidden under a stupid hat with a light on it.
Welcome to the Photographer and Model Podcast. I am Ron Davis.
I don't believe you. And I'm Shawna Rencher.
And I know that's not true.
Oh, let me tell you.
I know that the pod people came and got Shawna.
The podcast people.
The podcast people. That's why it's a podcast, because it's only made by pod people.
Exactly. You
So
know,
this is
that was one of our questions, incidentally. You know, people said, hey, pod people, podcast, how do you relate the two?
But
so, there you go.
The positive thing about being a pod person is they're all like great, good looking. That's why there's models and photographers. Because all photographers, of course, are highly attractive.
It's true. They're like the sirens of ancient Greek myth.
That's us. So we've
Anyway.
gotten a few listener questions, and so we're going to answer them. There you go. How's that? That's how this works. Okay, listener question number 1. How do you know when a project is finished? Not a single shoot where the goal is usually clear, but a collective like William Wegman and his dogs, or Avedon's portraits against a white background, etc.
Etc.
etc. And he actually has a portfolio for his whole project here called Thinking Inside the Box. And it's kind of an interesting idea because obviously pictures of people in boxes. And I can see how you would say, okay, have I done it? When have I got it? And I think we talked about it on the podcast a while back, but I actually did something. I think I wrote an article on it on the blog too. I did a project called Pull.
Right.
And I did this thing where the models would pull on a rope. It was like the same lighting setup and rope setup. And yeah, the question is, when is it done? How do you know when it's done? You ever done anything like that, Shawna?
Well, I mean, I've worked on all kinds of projects, just my own personal like writing projects and things like that. And it gets to that point where I think it's a little more clear with writing, obviously, because you have to have that beginning, middle, and end to tell a story.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you think about it, in a way, this is a story.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Anyway, yeah.
And I think once you get to that point where you're doing the same thing, you know, or what you're doing is not adding to the project,
Okay.
you know, wrap it up and put it away, at least for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe you're done for now, or maybe you're done completely. But either way, once you get to that point, you're just not adding anymore.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah, I remember reading a writing thing once, and it said you have to be able to hold, when you're writing, you have to be able to hold 2 thoughts in your head. One is, this is the worst piece of crap ever written and needs to be rewritten. And the second is, this is the greatest piece of literature ever produced. And you kind of have to hold both of them at the same time, because at some point you have to let it go.
Right.
Normally having a deadline is good for that.
Right.
It's like, I gotta let it go now, it's done, you know, I don't have
Right.
any choice.
Yeah, and if you're working on a project for photography and it's for a book or something, well, then obviously, yeah, I mean, when it's done, it's when
When
you
the
gotta
deadline comes, it's done, whether you think
Right.
it is or not.
Right.
And like the guy How I Became 100 Artist, the TED Talk, you know, he had a year, or was it 2 years?
Right.
Something like that. You know, he had that amount of time to do his project. And so you might want to just set up a time limit on yourself when you start. Like, I'm
Right.
going to do this for this many weeks or this many times or something like that.
So I started thinking about, okay, how am I going to do this biennial? How am I going to travel the world and find these artists? And then I realized one day, you know, there's an easier solution to this. I'm just going to make the whole thing myself. And so this is what I did. I thought, okay, a biennial needs artists. You know, I'm going to do an international biennial. I need artists from all around the world. So what I did was I invented 100 artists from around the world. I figured out their bios, their passions in life, and their art styles, and I started making their work. And so I thought, oh, this is this kind of project that I can spend my whole life doing. So I decided I'm going to make this a real biennial. It's going to be 2 years of studio work. And I'm going to create this in 2 years. And I have. So I should start to talk about these guys. Well, the range is quite a bit, and I'm such a technician, so I love this project, getting to play with all the techniques. So, for example, in realist paintings ranges from like this, which is kind of old master style, to really realistic still life, to this type of painting where I'm painting with a single hair. And then at the other end, there's performance and short films and indoor installations like this indoor installation and this one, and outdoor installations like this one and this one. I know I should mention, I'm making
On
all
pole,
these things.
I've
This
stopped
isn't
doing
Photoshop.
pole, and
I'm
mostly
under the river with those
because
fish.
I kind of lost the passion for it.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like it was a cool idea, and I did it a few times, and some models got it, and some models didn't, and that was fine. But there was just a point where I'm kind of like, yeah, whatever, I'm not going to ever pull on the rope anymore. I'm going to pull my finger instead. Chicks dig the pull the finger thing.
Right, that's very charming. It's very charming. But another thing about the project though is, I mean, a lot of the times when you feel inspired to do a project, it's because, conditions in your life, etc., are a certain way. So when those conditions change, are you going to be able to create the same images, or, you know what I mean? So even if you set it aside and you come back to it much later, it's not going to look the same because, I mean, you've probably done other things. You like your lighting a different way now, or whatever. Yeah. So sometimes there's that too.
Yeah, and just because you don't do it now doesn't mean it's done or it's not done. I mean, the thing is, you may be next 2 years from now and go, you know what? I need to put this model in the box because she would be great in the box. Yeah. Whatever, and so. And I could have a model and go, it would be cool to have her do the pull thing. And then I could pull out. Because I noticed, this actually kind of reminds me of pull in that, he's got these boxes, right? I mean, he could pull those boxes out at any time and do the box thing again. He actually seems to also, I can see he's doing some variations down here in the way, like this is hanging off the box instead of in the box. And so...
right. And just as a side note, I think the socks, that's really cute.
Hopefully that answers your question, Kevin. Next question is from Steve. And Steve says, I have started to hire models for regular studio photo shoots, but have a question about payment etiquette. Normally my shoots have been about 2 to 3 hours, but for 30 to 45 minutes, the model is usually putting on makeup, getting dressed. Up to this point, and as a rule, I start the clock when the model shows up. In the modeling profession, is it expected the rate is based on the arrival time or the time the model is ready to start shooting? I'm definitely not cheap, but I wanted to know if there is an expected practice. Nice podcast. Keep up the excellent work. Thank you, Steve. Here comes some of that excellent work right now.
Right now?
I pay him for the makeup, so it show up.
Right. Usually, like when I will quote rates to somebody, I'll usually block off a certain amount of time. Like I say, okay, well, I'll give you up to this many hours, and it's going to cost this much. Just because, I mean, you don't know. You don't know what's going on. But if it's really going to strictly be hour by hour, then it has to be at least 2 hours. And if it's only going to be an hour of shooting, and then the other hour is makeup, well then, that's that.
And I mean, if you had a makeup artist, if you were providing makeup, you're going to have to pay her to be in there to have the makeup done. Because that's the time she's going to be there. Now, I have had situations where the model was doing her own makeup, and she showed up with it done. And that's, it's a plus too. But I think in general, they expect there to be makeup time included in the shoot. And that's kind of the way I think it works.
Right.
So there you go, Steve. You are Steve. You're not Steven, so I don't have to put the on the end.
Right, and we've already had a Steve-O, so we can't call him Steve-O.
Yeah, no, we can't. We call him Stevie.
Stevie.
Yeah.
Stevie.
Okay. I had a model ask me for something, and we can get Shawna's opinion on this too. So I had a brand new, this is the first shoot she ever did. Oh, my friend who used to model for you wants me to model with you, blah, blah, blah. And we shot, and I retouched a number of images. I think it was like 10, 15. I normally promise 10, but I did probably more than that. And then she's like, can I see the rest of the images so I can see if there's anything else I like better for you to retouch? And I didn't like that idea. I'll go into more why. But what is your thoughts on how it works for getting images?
Well, personally, the photographers I work with, I like to think, okay, yeah, I can trust you to pick the proper images. I don't want to have to go through all those images. That's your job.
I don't even want to have to go through all those
right,
images.
Especially when there's a lot of them,
Mm-hmm.
So many are similar, and, so I would rather that they just did that. Sometimes, though, I've been at shoots, and I've had photographers, they have their laptops up, and it's just, because it's already going automatically, so they'll say, okay, well, just go and star the ones that you like.
I've done that before, too.
Right, if there is any that you just really like, and you definitely want them in there, just go and star them. And so I said, oh, okay, yeah, and I can do that really quick. But otherwise, as far as I've always considered it, it's, you get what the photographer touches up.
Yeah, and the real answer to what they should get is what you agreed on.
Right.
I mean, everybody does different. I know people who want to give you all of them because they don't ever want to talk to you again. So they're like, I'm just going to burn you a CD, and here it is, and you deal with the pictures any way you want. I don't do that because I consider that my art, and I don't want somebody else,
Right.
throwing it in photo booth to making Picasso,
Yeah.
what's it, Andy Warhol pictures of
Yeah.
it, and whatever. So I pick them, I retouch them. There's a limit to how many I can do because of how long it takes to actually do a retouch. I mean, I know photographers who only give them one. Mm-hmm. Those are generally what I call the designer photographers. It means they came in from graphic design and they spend 10 hours on one image.
Right.
I'm not one of those. I spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes on an image. And so, all that kind of depends on how many you're going to produce, is how long it takes you to produce those things. But the other thing I used to do this thing where I would put a big badge over the middle of them that said, it said outtake, do not distribute. And then I would give them raw ones in a smaller size so they could see everything. Because, I kind of felt like it also could be a learning experience.
Right.
To be able to see the ones that weren't good and kind of understand what is good and what isn't good. But I vary that now based on the model. Mm-hmm. And you kind of get a feel during the shoot if you show them pictures on the back of your camera, and you kind of get a feel for whether or not they can look at bad images of themselves and learn from them, or when they look at bad images of themselves, they just feel bad. Right. And they don't learn anything from it. And in this model's case, I kind of felt like she would just feel bad and not really learn anything. And she's not really at the point where she can critique herself.
Sure, because sometimes you can look at an image and see, and as a photographer, I mean, if he feels, that the model can do this, if he's seeing, he's like, well, we've taken 5 of these and I'm not really happy with these, maybe I'll have her take a look. Yeah. So that way maybe she can tell me what she thinks is going on here or whatever. And then maybe she'll be able to look at them and say, oh, okay, I see what's happening. I need to turn this way, or I need to turn, or I need to not slouch, right? Or whatever, But if it's something as far as oh, well, you need to face the key light or something, I mean, obviously the photographer can just tell her to do that. Right. But you get a lot of models, especially beginner models, they just look and they go, oh, I hate myself. I hate my life.
I'm fat.
I'm so fat. Blah, blah, blah. And so they're not getting, they're not going to be able to change anything. Right. Now they just feel bad. And now all the images are going to look bad.
Yeah, and so you kind of have to gauge it by the model, her experience level, and what you kind of the vibe you get off of her too. And the way I'm dealing with that is I'm just not answering her email. How's that for handling things?
Very passive aggressive.
How's that for handling things professionally?
Sometimes, and this is just me personally. Somebody says, "Hey, I want you to work on this project with me," or "Hey, this is what I think about this," or I'll say yes or no. Mm-hmm. And I'll be polite about it. Or, no thanks, I'm going to pass. Mm-hmm. Or, no, I don't think we should do that. Or, no, I'm not interested in shooting that. But I will say yes or no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not.
So if she's like, I want all these images and I think I should see them, say, okay, well, thanks for your correspondence, or thanks for your email, whatever. But it's not going to happen.
Yeah, take that. Yeah.
But that's not the kind of operation I run.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I could say, we agreed to do it this way.
Right.
And that's the way it is, because I don't like pictures that represent me that aren't that great
right.
out there.
So and thanks for the shoot, etc.
I'm not sure you're ready to look at bad pictures of yourself either.
You're not ready.
And then she'll probably blame me that she didn't look good. I don't take bad pictures, so it's got to be the model's problem.
We've answered a few questions from our forums, that sort of thing. If you would like your question answered by Ron and I,
yes,
you should be active in
the forum.
You
should look for all of Shawna's posts in the forum.
All of them. No, there are times when people will email us directly and say, "Hey, I was wondering this or that." Well, it's actually best if you put those questions in the forum. It's easier for us to see them and to make sure we incorporate them into the show. And it also gives other members a chance to respond to your question as well, because we obviously have our opinions, but you've got other models and photographers who have theirs, and they can offer you different perspectives.
Yeah, for example, there's a post where Jude posted some images from a shoot and asked us to give feedback, and actually other people got in there and gave him feedback before I had time to get in there and do it. So it's a good place to get some feedback on different things. Hopefully it's pretty easy to navigate and stuff. And we had a discussion recently about what software to use for the iPad. And then TJS Micro here, he gave us like reviews from 3 of them. He used this one, and then he went and got this one, and then he went and got this one. And so you can kind of find out what are some good iPad portfolio apps too. So there you go.
So the best way to interact with us is through the forum. And then you get to make friends with all kinds of other models and photographers. So network. Very good.
And models, if you want to have great influence over the young budding photographers, this is your chance, because they would just think, "Oh my gosh, a model told me this is the way it is, so it must be this way." Did you know you must have chocolate for your models on every photo shoot? Oh God, that's my problem. That's why this whole thing hasn't been working. I didn't have chocolate.
That is the problem right there. Note the date and time. We've discovered the mystery.
There you go. You have to have chocolate.
The answer.
There's a little known fact.
That's it for the podcast. I'm Shawna Rencher.
And I'm Ron Davis. And until next time, keep creating beautiful images of beautiful models.
Pow.
Thanks again for listening to the Photographer and Model Podcast. If you want to learn more, you can visit our website at photographerandmodel.com. There you can get complete show notes and sign up for our free model photography mini course. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a positive review on iTunes. You can get to the Photographer and Model Podcast iTunes page easily by entering the URL photographerandmodel.com/iTunes into any browser.